Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a short story because it is Short Story Tuesday, and today's short story is all about cults and ancient elder gods. I am referring to The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft, which was published in 1926. I've talked about H.P. Lovecraft on this channel before, so I don't need to go into too great of detail. Just know that he was a science fiction and horror writer, often writing for pulp magazines, but he also wrote more elaborate stories, and he built the idea of the Cthulhu mythos, in addition to sort of a cosmic horror kind of catalog of stories like the Dunwich Horror or The Color Out of Space, The Call of Cthulhu, and many other stories in the Cthulhu mythos, describing Cthulhu, of course, as well as the other ancient beings that once ruled over Earth and still want to rule over humanity when they eventually get free. So yeah, that's pretty much H.P. Lovecraft. A lot of people have also said that he's racist, but he's dead now, so he's probably not getting any money from me talking about him. So yeah, without further ado, let's talk about The Call of Cthulhu. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we'll move on from there. So The Call of Cthulhu focuses on, I say an unnamed narrator, but I'm told the man's name is Francis Thurston, but I don't recall seeing that in the story at large. But this narrator starts the story by talking about the various horrors that exist in the world that relate to something they discovered and that they wish they did not know about. They talk about how their great uncle died. He was a professor, and when he went through his things, he found a bas relief sort of sculpture thing of a sort of sea-like creature that had a human form a little bit, and he learned more about the cult of Cthulhu, which was a group of people who are sort of protecting some sort of secret and engaging in pagan worship. At least that's what the narrator believes. And as they do more research into this, they begin having bad nightmares, and they hear people going insane, and it's a very unusual situation for the narrator. And they begin reading more about the experiences of other people, including of a man named Inspector Legrasse, who works in New Orleans as a police officer, and he stumbles across a cult statue depicting a figure called Cthulhu, and Legrasse talks about how he went to a cult gathering, a voodoo gathering that he was going to bust, and in the middle of the swamps of Louisiana, and he heard strange calls and responses in there from both the cult that was doing it, like it was a weird cult orgy, and from a mysterious being in the woods that they couldn't quite get a good look at. But it made weird noises, and it looked to be a little octopus kind of like sea creature. And it worried a lot of people. But when they arrest the cult members start talking about Cthulhu, an ancient being that once ruled over the earth ever since the dawn of time. But eventually it was imprisoned, and as they say,
in his home in Relay, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming.
Just meaning that Cthulhu will one day rise up and take over humanity, and the cult of Cthulhu wants to usher this forth because for unknown reasons, the Cthulhu is clearly going to destroy them or enslave them, but it's a bit unclear what they stand to get out of this. And at this point, the narrator starts to suspect that their great uncle's death wasn't an accident. They were likely murdered by this cult to protect their secret and prevent other people from finding out. Thurston later stumbles across a newspaper account of a sailor named Johansen, who, after getting into a sort of sea battle with the cult of Cthulhu, who was riding in their own ship, they, like him and his fellow soldiers, stumbled across a mysterious island. And what they found in that island, nobody quite knows, but the people who came back were either like broken mentally or they had died. And Johansen didn't really want to talk about what had fully happened. At this point, the narrator recalls that the dates sort of align for why all these nightmares are happening, and so he seeks to investigate further. He goes to Norway to find Johansen, but finds that Johansen is dead, and so he asks Johansen's wife for his writings, and he learns that Johansen wrote about his account of going into this island and discovering the city of Riele. Relay, however you pronounce it, it's a weird word, but basically it's the city that has Cthulhu imprisoned along with a bunch of other ancient beings who briefly managed to get free and chase after and kill some of Johansen's colleagues. Johansen barely managed to escape with a couple other people, and those people went insane on the boat ride back home. And it appeared that Cthulhu managed to give chase a little bit before the island sank under the waters. And when another boat that saved them sailed over that place, the island was gone totally. So it appears that that the relay is back underwater, and like Johansen can't really prove that any of this actually happened and didn't want to talk about it because surely they would think he was insane. But as the story comes to a close, Thurston is very worried and scared about all of this, and especially notes that the cult of Cthulhu is likely going to come claim his life pretty soon in an effort to keep all of this a secret and work to usher forth Cthulhu's return in the near future. In terms of analysis, there is a fair bit to talk about with the Call of Cthulhu. One of the ideas that Lovecraft is working with here is that of conspiracy or the Cthulhu mythos. Because there is a great secret society at the heart of the Cthulhu mythos, a hidden world that not many people can see, but has been there lurking in the shadows for quite some time. And discovery of this conspiracy of the Cthulhu society leads to a great danger. If they find out that you know, they'll try to induct you in the cult, or they'll just try to straight up kill you so that other people can't find out about it. Because if you know about Cthulhu, you might try to stop him in some sort of way. And the cult doesn't want that. They want to usher him forth, and they want as few obstacles as possible. And surely there's other aspects of it. Like if you try to go to the island, Cthulhu might capture you and brainwash you or send images into your mind in an effort to sway you or something like that. And if there's also the danger of insanity, where like if you see those images, if you have those nightmares, it might drive you insane. But also the very idea of knowing about an all-powerful being that has existed since the dawn of time and is very capable of destroying humanity is enough to drive you insane on its own. This conspiracy is grand and it has a lot of danger to it. What I think Lovecraft is really getting at is that the world is much larger than you think it is. That there's always something hiding in the shadows that we don't quite understand. And even though at the time, what I think Lovecraft might be alluding to is that science was uncovering a lot of the world in the 20s, 30s, 40s, making it a little bit smaller. But at the same time, there's still a lot that we can't comprehend. And like at some certain points, if we learn about it, it might cause us undue worry or something like that. As much as we think we have the world figured out, there might be something lying in the shadows. It might not be, a giant godlike octopus creature monster. It might just be something smaller than that, but it's still something we might not completely understand. Lovecraft also describes cosmic horror in The Call of Cthulhu. He's really great at describing it. In fact, he's probably the best known author for touching upon cosmic horror, because you have a lot of writers who are writing about vampires, werewolves, creatures of the night, other like axe murderer, more realistic human type of horrors. or the supernatural type of horror. But here you have a Lovecraft describing more cosmic, otherworldly, other dimension type of horror. Thurston specifically is describing a fear of a great unknown terror. Dread is very much a large part of this, because sometimes you can't quite put words to what you're afraid of. You just feel this growing sense that something isn't quite right, which is what Thurston is going through in a large part of the story before he finds out about, Cthulhu. Like, this all doesn't add up right. Why is there like this conspiracy going on? It's unsettling, to say the least. And you also see this sort of cosmic, grand, larger scope of horror when we get to the section about Johansen and what he and his men uncovered in this island city of Relay. And there's an interesting quote that I would like to read to you from this. Johansen and his men were awed by the cosmic majesty of this dripping Babylon of elder demons, and must have guessed without guidance that it was nothing of this or any sane planet. Awe at the unbelievable size of the greenish stone blocks, at the dizzying height of the great carven monolith, and at the stupefying identity of the colossal statues and bas-reliefs with the queer image found in the shrine on the alert, is poignantly visible in every line of the mate's frightened description. And there you get a very interesting quote describing the awe, but also the fear of seeing these statues. And as the narrator says, that noting that it's not of any sane planet. Like, the thing that you're seeing comes from something beyond, something not of this world, something you're not fully capable of dealing with. It's the scale of horror itself that I think has something to do with cosmic horror, that it's not just, simply fighting, Jason Voorhees or a bear that's suddenly showing up in your neighborhood and wants to eat you. It's something much, much larger, and something that you're not capable of defeating on your own. It's something that is capable of sending images your way psychically, filling you with despair that way, and invading your dreams and filling it with nightmares. You feel utterly powerless. It's an existential kind of threat because, again, humanity can't defeat this thing on its own. It's not enough that there's a cult behind it, but it's just way more powerful than you ever could be, or that humanity ever could be. And it's like an asteroid or something. It's going to destroy you. It's going to replace you. And all you're left with is the feeling that, oh, well, we're powerless and we're going to die, and there's nothing we can do right there. And again, filling you with dread and a sense of hopelessness. I really like how Lovecraft describes cosmic horror and gives this sort of existential fear of the end of humanity and the fear of what's lurking in the shadows that might be more grander than we can possibly comprehend. It's really set Lovecraft apart from other authors in terms of describing that. It reminded me a lot of The Fisherman, which I talked about last October, which was a story about a man who discovers a sort of leviathan creature in the waters of a hidden world. And although The Fisherman came much later, it does borrow a lot from Lovecraft. So Lovecraft clearly has his influences, and cosmic horror is something that is worthy of being expounded upon. I do think there are a couple problems with the Call of Cthulhu. I do think the story structure distances you from the horror, because the story is told from the perspective of the narrator as they read or hear from other people. None of this happens to the narrator himself. He doesn't experience the horror of having to deal with Cthulhu. But maybe that's the sense of cosmic horror, in that you're being told a story from another person and saying, oh, this happened to someone I know, be on the lookout for this. And then you have to worry about that for the rest of your life, however long that is. But I still feel like it could have been better structured in terms of this happening to the narrator. Like what happens at the Mountains of Madness, where the narrator is describing all of these old, ancient things that they're looking at in somewhere like Antarctica. So I do think Lovecraft is capable of enhancing the story structure there. And then I also think the problem is that it's a little too scientific, sort of focusing on academia and being more academic in the description of things, feeling like I'm reading an anthropological record, which is probably Lovecraft's intent. But I think in doing so, it kind of makes it harder for people who don't exist in academia to really get into this. It's hard for me, and it just feels like Lovecraft is being wordy for the sake of being wordy sometimes. So I do feel that is something that hinders like complete enjoyment of the Call of Cthulhu. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on the Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. A pretty solid horror story, a solid science fiction story. I definitely recommend it to you. I feel like it's a sort of big sort of story and horror that everyone should read at least once in order to get an understanding of what cosmic horror and existential horror truly are. So yeah, definitely a recommendation from me. If you have anything you want to say about my review or just want to comment on the Cthulhu mythos, comment below. Let's have a discussion about that. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this story or this author if they don't already know, and feel free to join the Discord as well if you want to have more conversations about this sort of thing. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and cosmic travels. Farewell.